Dan Perino along with Juan Williams, Jesse Waters, and Brett Baer, and we are working on Greg's shot. We're going to get him in just a moment. It's 5 o'clock in New York City and Washington, D.C. This is The 5. Joe Biden finally condemning violent protests after facing enormous pressure to do so. It comes after growing turmoil in Kenosha, Wisconsin over the police shooting of Jacob Blake. Police arresting a 17-year-old juvenile suspect and charging him with murder after 2 people were shot dead and a third was injured last night. The city also seeing businesses looted and some set on fire earlier this week. President Trump announcing that he will be sending in federal law enforcement and the National Guard. And Joe Biden releasing a video today saying he spoke with Jacob Blake's family and reacting to the unrest. Watch.
As I said after George Floyd's murder, protesting brutality is a right and absolutely necessary. But burning down communities is not protest, it's needless violence. Violence that endangers lives, violence that guts businesses and shutters businesses that serve the community. That's wrong. In the midst of this pain, the wisest words that I've heard spoken so far have come from Julia Jackson, Jacob's mother. She looked at the damage done in her community and she said this, quote, "This doesn't reflect my son or my family. So let's unite and heal, do justice, end the violence, and end systemic racism in this country now."
And breaking right now, the Milwaukee Bucks boycotting an NBA playoff game in response to the Jacob Blake shooting. The senior vice president of the Bucks, Alex Lazary, tweeting, "Some things are bigger than basketball. The stand taken today by the players and organization shows that we're fed up. Enough is enough. Change needs to happen. I'm incredibly proud of our guys, and we stand 100% behind our players, ready to assist and bring about real change." And other teams are reportedly planning on doing the same thing. So we'll get to all of this. Brett, let me start with you because it is interesting that I'm sitting next to him, but I have to look here.
I can look at you.
It's so weird to be back with the people. Joe Biden making a statement today. It's interesting that we're in a 24/7 news cycle. Things move fast, and yet the statement was a little bit late in coming.
Well, very late in coming. It came actually 15 minutes after you talked to the press secretary for the Biden campaign on your show, the Daily Briefing. But listen, it came, and they're going to point to it again and again, saying he's denounced this violence. But he did, by not doing it at the DNC, at the convention, were Democrats addressing the topic in full at the DNC last week, gave Republicans an opening. And this week they took it. I mean, you've heard this again and again and again about Democrats not speaking out on violence. Now the question is, where does this go? I've heard Democrats blaming the Trump campaign and the Trump administration for the chaos. That doesn't seem to fly.
Well, what's their argument for that, though? Why would they say that President Trump is responsible?
I'm just saying that that's the sentence they're using, chaos under the Trump administration. But you can't use that, because then the riots in Baltimore with Freddie Gray become President Obama's problem in that administration. It's not one that's going to stick.
Juan, let's ask you about just not only the politics, but about this news about the NBA making, at least the Bucks and possibly other teams making this decision.
I'm so proud of him. I think on Sunday, Dana, LeBron James, who's obviously the superstar of the entire league right now, tweeted this statement. He said, "We are scared. We feel like we're being hunted. Black men, black women, black children." And I think this is a sentiment that is widespread, that somehow right now people are ignoring the fact that that young man was shot 7 times in the back. I don't know if you saw his dad speaking, but his father was just about to break down when speaking about what happened to his son. And there's no question about, violence being the wrong thing. I mean, I don't think anybody wants to embrace violence. But when you have a situation where the president simply sends troops, where he sort of politicizes it, where there's a lack of leadership on police reform, a lack of racial healing in the country, I do think that you can then say this is what we have under the incumbent.
Jesse, maybe speak to that.
Well, yeah, I'd love to speak to that because the
Okay.
Democrats walked away from police reform that Tim Scott had out on the table because they said they wanted to keep the issue alive for the election.
That's not what they said,
The president
Jesse.
has also sent troops at the request of the governor of Wisconsin after the president's office had offered troops last night, after police had requested backup, and now we have additional people dead and more businesses destroyed. So the whole lie that federal troops cause chaos is wrong. When there were federal troops there protecting the courthouse in Portland, the left said, oh, they're the ones causing the violence. The federal agents leave because the state troopers now are going to post up to the building. And what happened? Did the riot stop in Portland? No. They continued and they actually grew in ferocity. I want to talk just a second about what happened. First of all, my heart goes out to the Blake family, his children, the mother. It's a horrible way to die. It's tragic. No one wants to see this happen in the United States of America, and it was completely avoidable. What we know is this. They have a 911 call that comes in, and they say that Blake is at this place. He's not supposed to be there, and he's now stolen the keys of the woman, and he's not giving them back. The police are alerted to the fact that there's an active felony warrant against Blake for sexual assault, and they know from his criminal history that he has felony weapons issues as well. So when they arrive at the scene, a fight breaks out, there's a scuffle, he resists arrest, they're wrestling on the floor or something like that, and you hear someone or someone hears someone say, drop the knife. You don't see the knife though. So as he resists, he's tased. Taser does not affect him, and then he goes into his vehicle and looks like he's reaching for something. Now, if someone reaches in a vehicle like that after they've assaulted a police officer and resists arrest, if you're a police officer, you are trained to neutralize that suspect. We don't even know if he had a gun because the state won't release that information. That's critical information. Some believe 7 rounds in that situation is excessive, and that's going to be adjudicated. But if you now have, what is this, day 3 of the riots, and there's a power vacuum because the state is not sending in people to calm things down. Sadly, you're going to have vigilante justice. You're going to have business owners send in people or go in themselves to protect their small business that they've worked their lives to make work. And things happen and it's horrible and that's not the way to handle it. But unfortunately, this is what happens when a governor abdicates his responsibility to keep the safe streets.
Jesse, I hope that you're not trying to excuse that young man being shot
I
like
am
that.
not at all.
Because I just want to point out to you, I just want to say to you, Jesse, I just want to point out to you that in fact what we know at this juncture there was no gun. The guns were drawn on that young man as he was walking before he even got near the car door. And the second thing to say is that the violence, the deaths, the murders that we saw last night are now, there was a young man arrested who was not from Kenosha, from out of town, whose social media and the like suggested he thinks of himself as a militia member. So he was there as a provocative act.
And I totally condemn that. And sadly, Juan, because of the situation, you're going to have people come into communities and try to protect communities when the government doesn't and the police don't. That's not what he should be doing, but sadly, that is the reality of the situation.
With guns, they're okay.
Okay, guys, I have a couple of things. One, I think, Jesse, there was a slight, we just want to be clear, Jacob Blake is alive, and he's recovering, and he unfortunately at the moment paralyzed, but recovering from surgery. Also, just in, the NBA is announcing that the 3 playoff games that were going to happen tonight, they have been postponed. So that's the latest on that. Greg Gutfeld, we have your shot up. There you are. I want to play for you some sound from CNN as they contemplate the consequences of not talking about this stuff. Watch.
I think this is a blind spot for Democrats. I think Democrats are ignoring this problem or hoping that it will go away. And it's not going to go away. Joe Biden may be afraid to do it. I'm not sure. Maybe he won't. Maybe he is. He's got to address it. The rioting has to stop. Chris, as you know and I know, it's showing up in the polling. It's showing up in focus groups. It is the only thing right now that is sticking.
Greg, let's get your thoughts on that.
Well, first of all it took was CNN's Don Lemon to get Joe to wake up and smell the arson I don't know if I want a
No, actually, it
president
was
who
the
won't
Daily
stop to
Briefing.
condemn. Was it the Daily Briefing?
Yeah,
I
because
apologize.
that was last night, and
So
that was
all it took.
today. Yeah.
All right. So imagine. The fact is, imagine if at first the riots there was a consequence to them. If they had acted swiftly on them, people would have said, "Oh dear, how dare you treat these protesters that way?" So now we couldn't do anything. They abdicated their responsibility, and now you have anarchy, you have violence, you have militias, you have defenders of property. Now Juan comes up and he cares because 2 people were shot last night. Well, that ship has sailed, Juan. I was here every day warning that this would happen. I said that if something wasn't done to quell the violence, you're going to end up with people filling that void. And there is a danger when you put polls before people, which is what Don Lemon did. The fact that the news is somehow less important than the polls that it caused, there's a huge flaw in that because you don't consider the violence and the death and the murder important enough to address unless it affects your party or you personally politically. So that allowed CNN and others to sit back and ignore the mayhem and death, which then leads to last night. Because once the police are not allowed to act, the rioting can proceed without consequence. People come in and fill the void. And anybody, any armchair quarterback who said that the riots were just an anomaly, or in Juan's case, sporadic. Oh, this stuff is just sporadic. Well, last night wasn't sporadic. You lost the authority to comment on it. Too bad.
No, in fact, you know what the situation is? You're trying to undercut the power of you're trying to undercut the power of a peaceful, overwhelmingly peaceful Black Lives Matter movement. And what you're doing is trying to feed the kind of anger and resentment and grievance that led that young man to get a military gun and go to Kenosha. I mean, it's just, to me, that is not responsible.
It feels like with the there is a lot of anger to go around, and I think that the business owners that are trying to clean up today, they're angry too. We have more coming up. Republicans making the case to re-elect President Trump. Some of the biggest moments and what to expect tonight.
Republicans gearing up for night 3 of the RNC, the party looking to counter Democrats' attacks and continue to make the case why President Trump deserves 4 more years in the White House. Speakers last night highlighting President Trump's accomplishments, defending his actions. Take a look.
Over and over, issue after issue, the economy, the wall, the military, trade deals, tax cuts, Supreme Court justices, promises made and promises for the first time were kept.
I urge you to make judgment based on results and not rhetoric.
Our economic choice is very clear. Do you want economic health, prosperity, opportunity, and optimism? Or do you want to turn back to the dark days of stagnation, recession, and pessimism?
Despite the unprecedented attacks from the media and opposition, he will not give up. In fact, if you tell him he cannot be done, he just works harder.
First Lady in the Rose Garden there. Okay, Greg, your big moment last night?
Oh, it had to be the naturalization ceremony. It always brings a lump to your throat, even though the media will mock it, because they always wonder how silly it is to want to come to America, which, as you've heard already, is a racist, sexist, imperialistic hell, except that maybe 4 billion people want to get into it. It was also great in the ceremony to see non-celebrities who can't wait to come to America, as opposed to celebrities who always keep vowing to leave America but never do. And it's easy when you're rich, right? When you've already made it, when you're a professional athlete, to preach defeatism to others. Here's an observation. If you took a Venn diagram of people who became naturalized citizens, right, and put that in one circle, and then you put the other circle, rioters, those circles will never overlap. You'd have a better chance of finding Brian Stelter on a Peloton than a naturalized citizen rioting.
Okay, Juan, up-and-coming star, Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron. Take a listen to this.
I think often about my ancestors who struggled for freedom. And as I think of those giants and their broad shoulders,
I also think about Joe Biden, who says, if you aren't voting for me, you ain't black. Mr. Vice President, look at me. I am black. We are not all the same, sir. I am not in chains. My mind is my own. And you can't tell me how to vote because of the color of my skin.
We have not seen the end of the Kentucky Attorney General.
No, I think he's got a political future. He's quite a good speaker, and one of my friends said he was very good looking.
Juan, I told you that in confidence.
No. Actually, it was someone else on this panel, but I won't say who. I'll leave that up to her.
Ooh, okay.
So if you had asked me to pick a star last night, Brett, I would have said Melania Trump. That whole setting in the Rose Garden was phenomenal. Just spectacular. Obviously, there are questions about the ethics of it, but let's forget that for the moment. And I thought she did a good job. Why? Because I thought that, unlike the rest of the convention, her speech was an outlier in that she spoke emphatically and empathetically about the coronavirus and said that, she understands people who are suffering, and she's particularly related, and of course this is the target audience for the entire convention, to moms, to suburban moms, and said, the president is fighting for you. You are warriors, and the president is in your fight. The problem is, the same day, Larry Kudlow, the economic advisor, is talking about the coronavirus as if it's in the past tense, as if it's already gone. And then you have a problem where today it's reported that the president is pressing the CDC to change its standards for testing, and so not to test people who've been exposed. Again, the idea is fewer tests, therefore we'll have less data to indicate the severity of the coronavirus problem so many months after it started.
Dana, you heard Juan reference it there. There's a big dust-up. Some of the media, and definitely Democrats, saying that the trappings of the White House and all of this are wrong, some saying illegal. The White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, saying today, outside the Beltway, people don't care. You buy that?
Well, a couple things. So I do think that they ran this through the counsel's office, and actually the Rose Garden is exempt, so let's just cross that one off the list. And besides, the Trump family and the entire RNC, they were planning to be in Charlotte, North Carolina this week. They wouldn't even be at the White House if it weren't for the pandemic, and Joe Biden wouldn't be in Delaware if it weren't for the pandemic. Everybody would be traveling everywhere. So I think that the Hatch Act violations is such a small ball issue, because truly, did anyone wake up today wishing that those new Americans were not citizens today? Or did anybody wake up thinking, gosh, John Ponder really didn't deserve that pardon last night from the White House. You should have had it from somewhere else. I don't think so. Those were big moments. And here's something that Jim Garrity at National Review said, that the unconventional convention is kind of a blessing in disguise, because it forced the president's team to have him doing things rather than just saying things. And if I had to pick a star last night, I'm going with the Maine lobsterman. He said that in 2016, he did not vote for President Trump. He did not think he would follow through on conservative principles. His mind has been changed, and so he is going to vote for him. But importantly, it was a policy issue. There was the EU tariffs on lobster. The president worked that issue with Senator Collins of Maine. They got that resolved, and now he is saying that that industry is preserved and saved under the president. So you're looking at specific, concrete things. That's what I would say. If you are an independent voter or a crossover voter, you're not exactly sure, something like that might change your mind.
Lobster. It was the accent alone. Jesse, wrap it up.
I would say that last night showed that America First puts people first. You're talking about lobstermen, steelworkers, dairy farmers who under Barack Obama and Joe Biden suffered, and under this president have succeeded. So that really puts a face to the trade policies, tax and regulation cuts. There was a strong outreach to Christians, from the right to try children whose lives were saved, to the story from the pro-life woman about a baby fighting off an abortion in the womb while the Planned Parenthood administrator cracked jokes. They talked about how this president, the first president in decades who hasn't initiated a new war in a term, compare that to Joe Biden, who was backing wars in Serbia and Syria and Iraq and Libya. I think it was Dana's boyfriend, the Kentucky AG, really said,
I don't even think,
I know it was you, Dana, said that Joe Biden's a backwards thinker on race and said that he's made more promises to illegals than he has to Americans. And then Pam Bondi really did a number on Joe's grifting family. There was also talk about the one war the president has waged, which was opioids. 33 years. Deaths from overdoses have been on the rise. First year ever. They've now declined. So I think what the president did was he really said, these are my policies. These are the people that are benefiting from my policies. Joe Biden won't tell you his policies because they're too crazy, and his policies hurt people. And I hate to say this, I agree with Juan. Melania was the star last night. You could hear a pin drop in the Rose Garden.
How often does that happen here on the 5? You agree with one. All right, coming up, is it 2016 all over again? Why some people think President Trump could pull off another upset this November.
About Joe Biden's lack of in-person campaigning. The Hill reporting strategists are concerned the former VP could be giving President Trump an advantage by not going to key swing states. And even though Biden leads in the polls, new signs show the 2020 race, it's far from over. Axios warning Democrats that President Trump could pull off another upset this November. They highlight how the president's doing better in some swing states than he was at this time in 2016. Brett Baer, we're lucky to have you here today, so let me just ask you what you're hearing from political insiders. I mean, the reality is Biden's had a persistent lead now, plus 10, but it's been that way for months, and fewer people have been watching the GOP convention than watch the Democrats convention. So what are the insiders saying about the best, most positive signs for President Trump?
Well, we're getting the ratings for the second night, and I think they're a little bit increased as far as the numbers of people looking at the second night as opposed to the first. But I will say that the key swing state polls are getting tighter, and they are better than Trump did in 2016 versus Hillary Clinton. I just noticed that pundits are a little bit more gun-shy about going out on an edge, even though the polls say that he's up 7, 8, 9, 10 points. And I think the biggest thing that I saw was Hillary Clinton saying that Joe Biden should not concede if he loses. Now, there was not even an if he loses thing a couple of weeks ago or a month ago. The fact that she's saying that, I think, is a signal that they know this is going to be a barn burner down to the end.
Hey, Greg, I was trying to think about why people are so insistent on getting Biden to do some in-person campaigning. I recall that his strategy in the primaries led some people to say, oh, he's written off, he's dead, he's never coming back, but he came back. So why write off the strategy he's pursuing now?
Maybe because you're scared and you think it's going to end, that it can't last because he didn't get a bump from last week, and you know that Trump's going to get a bump from this week. I'm sorry, you can't live the lifestyle of a doomsday prepper forever. You got to get outside, right? I mean, I don't want my president to be a member of the mole people. He's got to be from Earth and not Middle Earth. By the way, I was thinking about tonight, it's interesting how the Republicans have co-opted the Democratic theater of identity politics and turned it into something positive. You know how the Democrats use identity politics and they create little factions that fight against each other, gender versus gender, race versus race. But the Republicans this week, and I'll add tonight because they're going to have Rick Grinnell speaking, and I bet he's not even going to mention the fact that he's gay, because in the Republican world of identity politics, they have everybody. They have everybody, but they all unite under one identity, America. And I think that's going to win.
Dana, Greg mentioned that Biden did not get a bump out of the Democratic convention. Democrats say, yeah, but guess what? People previously said, nah, we don't know about Biden. We're really voting against Trump. But after the convention, Biden's favorability went up, and now more people are saying they're enthusiastic and are voting for Biden, not just against Trump.
Well, and bumps from any conventions are fleeting, right? But it is the beginning of the real campaign. Races are tightening everywhere. I'll just point you back to 2004. For that re-election, Ed Gillespie ran the RNC at the time. They registered something like, I think, 350,000 new voters that year. And when the votes were tallied in 2004, the number of votes that President Bush won by went up by 315,000, something like that. So new voter registration is really important. The Republicans doing a great job on that. I don't have the numbers for the Democrats. Maybe they are as well, but that's what I would say for the Republicans. And then the third thing is something that Bill Stepien, who is the campaign manager for President Trump, said yesterday, that they have options when it comes to getting to 270 electoral votes. Remember, President Trump won by 306 because he tipped those 3 upper Midwest states. They don't have to win all of them. And I do think there's something that they're not up on TV right now, the Trump campaign. They're trying to save some money for the end. I don't think they necessarily need to do that. I think the money will be flowing into the campaign, especially after this week.
Jesse, you often have your finger on the American pulse. Why do you think Republicans are so anxious in pushing Biden to change his basement strategy?
I don't want to see more of Joe. I want Joe to stay in the basement. I was offering friendly advice to Joe because I've told you for a long time, Juan, staying in the basement is not going to get you the victory. And I was right. So they should just name this segment Waters Was Right, because look at the polling. It's tightening in the battlegrounds among independents. Even the betting markets are moving in Trump's direction. He's now over 50% approval in 2 polls, and he's within margin of error in every single battleground. And Brett's right. Better than he was in 2016. And to Dana's point, he could lose all 3 of those Rust Belt states that he picked off last time and just win Minnesota. And that still gets him to 270. So he has plenty of money to get on a jet. He just raised, what, 75 mil last week? Get some tests, hop on a jet, go to a factory, a school, or a football game. Do something to show the country that you want it. I mean, you basically taken for granted the black vote. Don't take for granted the entire Democrat vote. You got to show you want this thing. You got to compete. Right now, he's not competing.
Own the news cycle, Juan. I mean, that's what it is. When the president goes to these towns and cities, he takes the local news market and becomes the story.
And the headlines
Biden's
are good.
not doing that.
Well, we'll see what happens. More on the Republican.
In just a few moments, our special coverage for the RNC Night 3 kicks off. Among the speakers, Kellyanne Conway, Larry Trump, and Vice President Pence. The theme, Land of Heroes. But first, my monologue. Monday night, a group of what appears to be mainly white agitators harassed diners in D.C. restaurants for not raising their fists in solidarity to their cause. The threat is obvious. If you raise your fist, they won't film you. But if you bravely resist, they will intimidate you and film you, with the consequence being you're now a target. Here, a woman was surrounded by white fiends, an inch within her face, daring her to respond, their cameras poised to capture and release. Perfectly named, the woman, Lauren Victor, resisted. And she did so even though she supported the cause. Why is that important? Because dictatorships begin as a demand that you act on their terms, not yours. The cause they ask you to support could be one that you yourself adore, like free pomade for Jesse. But the moment the mob decides you must endorse it publicly, then it's evil. Here's another group harassing a couple eating outside. This is how you ruin a meal and re-elect Trump. So what about the other diners who raised their fists? You won't know who they are because they escaped the wrath. Do the aggressors know if that raised fist was real or done out of fear? They don't care because it's all about wielding power, using fear as a tactic. Oh, they're good fascists in the making. So what about you? When the time comes, will you raise your fist or face down the mob? Raising the fist will get the ghouls to leave you be, but will you sleep well at night? As for Lauren Victor, I have a feeling she'll have no such insomnia because she sleeps with a brave heart, her own. So I'm always really curious when I see this stuff. I think about how I would react if I was eating there and that happened. So everybody should just say, what would you do? Brett, would you raise your fist even if you agreed with them? I mean, if you agreed with them, would you still raise your fist? What would you do?
No, I wouldn't raise my fist. I would tell my kids not to raise their fists. But listen, what I really feel is sad when I look at that video. I feel sad for the restaurant owner who's just been through a pandemic, who has lost a ton of business, who finally has people eating outside after the government opened back up. And what happens? That's what I feel.
Yeah, I agree. Juan, would you call this a mostly peaceful meal?
Yeah, it was peaceful. I mean, clearly the people who were dining said they weren't scared, but they were irritated. And I think it's wrong to disrupt a private dinner, to go on private property of a restaurant and do that. I just thought it was childish. I thought it was wrong. I think that movement in support of the protesters in Kenosha needs allies. It doesn't need to antagonize people. But I think, you know, when I was listening to the monologue, Greg, I think you're missing. You're looking at the trees and missing the forest. The forest here is that people of all colors are saying that police shooting was wrong. That's the death of that young man is far more than a couple of diners thinking, boy, these are some jerks marching down the street making demands on me.
That was the same argument you used with the riots about 2 months ago, but I'll leave it there. So, Juan, Jesse, I get you two confused. A couple years ago, they were just harassing politicians. They were harassing politicians at restaurants. Now they've expanded the target to just people who do not bend to their demands. It's actually getting way worse.
Well, because they don't have the intellect to debate the issues. Used to be in America, you persuaded the other side with ideas and words and policies to come vote for you. But now they just smear you, they harass you, and they intimidate you. It just shows how they've given up. Even in the policy debate, you don't hear the Democrats talking about trade policy, immigration policy, foreign policy, tax policy, nothing. They just say Trump's evil and vote for us or we're going to kick your butt. And if that was me, it depends on what I was eating, honestly, Gutfeld. It really would depend. Yes. I mean, if I just sat down and I was hungry, that might go up. But if I'm near dessert, I might take a stand.
You are definitely, you're always thinking about the bill. That's what you're thinking about. Dana.
No, I blame the Chinese virus. Because if they don't have that, you're sitting indoors and no one can go inside and harass you.
Well, they were inside that bar.
Were they?
So, Dana, you're sitting there with Peter. Yeah, you're sitting there with Peter. You're a public figure, which means if you do anything, the moment it happens, you're all over the place. But Peter, I know Peter. What would happen?
Do you remember when the bicyclists were riding like crazy through Central Park and they murdered that woman?
Yes.
And then Peter ended up in the New York Post yelling at the guy like, yeah, this would be much different. But I have to tell you, this really bothers me. Kamala Harris talks about being a little girl that was bussed and what that meant to her. But there were other people who got bussed too and bullied at that time. And I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
I'll never forget it. Changed my life.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, that's when I saw that, I remembered that feeling. And I think this is what I would have done. First of all, I would have stood up and I would have climbed on top of my chair because I got to be taller than them. And then you would have heard words that you didn't even think I knew coming out of my mouth. It would have been bleeped. They would have to bleep it all around. And then I would say, and by the way, what gives you the right to yell in my face during the pandemic? That should be a felony. They should be charged with that.
Oh, good point.
Because just because they have a political statement to make doesn't mean they should be allowed to come and yell in their faces. I thought it was terrible, and I feel awful for the business owners. Do not raise your fists. Don't do it. Be strong.
Yeah. You do not want to piss off Dana. She may weigh like 70 pounds, but it turns into rocket fuel. All right. Republicans getting ready for the third night of the RNC. Ahead, Nick Sandmann calls out cancel culture and the media.
Republicans getting ready to kick off the third night of the RNC. Our special coverage starts at the top of the hour. Vice President Mike Pence headlining tonight's event. And one of the key themes this week is cancel culture. Covington teen Nick Sandmann, who was smeared by the media, calling them out. Take a look.
I learned what was happening to me had a name. It was called being canceled, as in annulled, as in revoked, as in made void. Canceled is what's happening to people around this country who refuse to be silenced by the far left.
Pretty big moment last night, Greg.
Yeah, but the overarching message here is that the Republican Party, is now the party of individual freedom. If you look at the first 2 days anyway, you have the freedom to work, the freedom to live, the freedom to be free, in this case from slander, and the freedom from violence and intimidation. So we're getting this great contrast, individual freedom versus mob. The Democratic Party is the party of the mob.
Brett, he had a nice line when he said the full media war machine revved up and didn't try to ask me my side of the story, wasn't interested in the facts at all. It was a real shot at just journalism in general.
It's an amazing story. He's getting the last laugh. I love the fact that he wants to be a lawyer and practice defamation law, and he can buy a lot of MAGA hats with that settlement.
Dana, that was just a great moment. He just slaps the MAGA hat right on at the end and says, "Have no fear."
And you know that goes against Dana Perino's PR rules, that not putting on a hat when you're doing an event, but I think that he pulled it off very well. I would also say it was quite fun to see all the media have to be very, very quiet about his speech because they have to.
Yes, Juan, we'll give you the last word, but just be careful what you say.
Other than Joe Lockhart, I guess.
I just hope that he's willing to speak up against the king of cancel culture, the man who tried to boycott Goodyear, Harley Davidson, Apple, CNN, the NFL, Macy's. Oh, I think that's Donald Trump. Go, Nick. Go speak out against him.
I don't think you can cancel a Fortune 500 company, Juan.
You have to redefine it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. One more thing. It's time
now for one more thing.
Oh, yes. It's time now. Go ahead, Greg.
All right, Greg, you're up.
Got it. All right. Yesterday, Riley Gale, lead singer of Power Trip and all-around brilliant dude, died in his sleep at the age of 34. I became friends with Riley in the most unlikely realm, Twitter. I played 2 of his songs right here on the 5 from his amazing record, Nightmare Logic. If you love metal, you'll dig that, and you should get it and make that album go #1. The band's Twitter reaction after I played their songs ceased to desist. But Riley wanted to talk about it, so I called him up. The phone call lasted 2.5 hours. We laughed at how some people think it's wrong for people who disagree to be friends. From that moment on, that's what we became, friends, good friends. He gave me this damn shirt. We met in Texas at a bar with his great dad, and both came with me to my book signing where Riley actually helped unpack my books and hand them out. It was priceless. It was a blast. During this pandemic, we talked often and a lot about everything under the sun. It was clear this period was hitting him pretty hard, so we helped each other out. I wish I had done more, frankly. I'm going to miss him. Riley Gale, rest and rock in peace. If you want to make a donation in his name, check out Dallas Hope Charities.
Powerful tribute. I'm sorry for your loss. I have a little bit slightly different thing to talk about. It's National Dog Day, so of course, got to talk about the dogs. This is Kayla. She is 2020 cutest canine. She is an explosive detection canine, and she just won the cutest canine contest that the TSA held. And, dogs are amazing. I feel great about the Vizsla. Jasper, this is what Jasper did today. It didn't work like Kayla did. Jasper was just hanging out. Also, I've got a new podcast, I'll tell you what, on foxnewspodcast.com.
Jesse's movie recommendations. Let's see it. Do we have anything? There it is. Look at those 3D glasses. Actually, I own a pair like that. All right. There's a movie out. It's called Guest House. It stars my bud, Pauly Shore. It drops on September 4th. It looks hilarious. Do we have a clip?
I just don't feel comfortable allowing some weirdo to live in our guest house.
Jesus, that's not okay.
I totally forgot to tell you, they're bug bombing the house today. It's actually really funny. I laughed out loud when I watched the trailer. It's a Lionsgate release. September 4th, everybody. Don't miss it.
Do not miss it. Looks great. Juan, you got 23 seconds.
All right, well, I just want to say I love rainbows, and I want you guys to look at a picture, because rainbows I know are in the sky, but look at this one. It's a cave. That's the St. Cuthbert's Cave in Britain, and as legends has it, mothers used to bring sick children there in the 1800s. Now it's abandoned, but it's a natural wonder.
All right, that's it for us. We're going to hand it off to Brett Baer for special coverage of the Republican National Convention. Hey, Brett.
Hey, I'm still here.
Republicans getting ready to kick off the third night of the RNC. Our special coverage starts at the top of the hour. Vice President Mike Pence headlining tonight's event. And one of the key themes this week is cancel culture. Covington teen Nick Sandman, who was smeared by the media, calling them out. Take a look.
I learned what was happening to me had a name. It was called being canceled, as in annulled, as in revoked, as in made void. Canceled is what's happening to people around this country who refuse to be silenced by the far left.
Pretty big moment last night, Greg.
Yeah, but you know the overarching message here is that the Republican Party is now the party of individual freedom. If you look at the first 2 days anyway, you have the freedom to work, the freedom to live, the freedom to be free, in this case from slander, and the freedom from violence and intimidation. So we're getting this great contrast, individual freedom versus mob. The Democratic Party is the party of the mob.
Brett, he had a nice line when he said the full media war machine revved up and didn't try to ask me my side of the story, wasn't interested in the facts at all. It was a real shot at just journalism in general.
It's an amazing story. He's getting the last laugh. I love the fact that he wants to be a lawyer and practice defamation law, and he can buy a lot of MAGA hats with that settlement.
Dana, that was just a great moment. He just slaps the MAGA hat right on at the end and says, "Have no fear."
And you know that goes against Dana Perino's PR rules, that not putting on a hat when you're doing an event, but I think that he pulled it off very well. I would also say it was quite fun to see all the media have to be very, very quiet about his speech because they have to.
Yes, Juan, we'll give you the last word, but just be careful what you say.
Other than Joe Lockhart, I guess.
I just hope that he's willing to speak up against the king of cancel culture, the man who tried to boycott Goodyear, Harley Davidson, Apple, CNN, the NFL, Macy's. Oh, I think that's Donald Trump. Go, Nick. Go speak out against him.
I don't think you can cancel a Fortune 500 company, Juan.
You have to redefine it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
That's
one more
not cancel
thing.
culture.
Up next.
I can tell you.
Forget about me.
Introducing Schwab Stock Slices. For as little as $5, now anyone can own companies in the S&P 500, even if their shares cost more. At $5 a slice, you could own 10 companies for $50 instead of paying thousands. All commission-free online. Schwab Stock Slices, an easy way to start investing or to give the gift of stock ownership. Schwab, own your tomorrow.
Greedy drug companies seeking even bigger profits are lying about President Trump. Here's what President Trump's plan really does. Reduces Medicare and prescription drug prices. Reduces the cost of insulin. Cuts the cost of life-saving medicine. That's why Big Pharma is attacking President Trump. They liked it better with Joe Biden when healthcare costs skyrocketed. President Trump is standing up to the drug companies and fighting for us.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
They served with honor, survived the battlefield, and now they've come home.
I was sitting there in my apartment. The TV was on. I was halfway through a bottle of whiskey, and my intention was not to see the sunrise that morning. Until there was a documentary that involved Wounded Warrior Project. That morning I saw the sunrise. If it wasn't for that Wounded Warrior Project commercial, I would not be here. It was Wounded Warrior Project that saved my life.
From the #1 rated brand in cordless outdoor power, introducing the new Ego Power Plus blower, the handheld blower with unmatched power. It generates 650 cubic feet of air per minute, delivering performance that exceeds the power of gas. Featuring Ego's patented 56-volt arc lithium battery technology, it runs for over 90 minutes on a single charge. The all-new Ego Power Plus blower, available at Lowe's, Ace, and Ego authorized dealers.
If you struggled to lose weight, you might think you were born with a slow metabolism. That's exactly what these people thought. But the truth is, a slow metabolism can be created by a condition called insulin resistance. Once you have insulin resistance, fat becomes trapped inside your body and it becomes very difficult to lose weight, even if you crash diet. But now there's a solution to insulin resistance. It's a completely new way to lose weight called GOLO. GOLO works to reverse the effect of insulin resistance, increase metabolic efficiency, and target stubborn belly fat. Join over 500,000 people who have found a smarter way to lose weight and get healthier without starvation dieting. GOLO allows you to step off the yo-yo dieting merry-go-round and obtain lasting results just like these people have.
I lost 75 pounds with GOLO.
Head to GOLO.com now. That's GOLO.com. Go lose weight, go look great, go love life at GOLO.com.
Our paths aren't all the same. We have different perspectives on the best way forward. But on issues that matter, like climate change, we're more alike than we think. We want cleaner solutions, and that means working with each other. So the innovators in America's natural gas and oil companies have teamed up with the country's brightest minds and reduced carbon emission levels to the lowest in a generation. Let's make tomorrow better together.
South Dakota, the land of the free. With our breathtaking landscapes and wide open spaces, we're a place to safely explore. And with our low taxes, we're a place to grow. We're open for opportunity, and always will be. I'm Governor Kristi Noem. Celebrate what makes America great, and experience the great faces and great places of South Dakota.
It's time now
for one more thing.
Oh, yes. It's time now. Go ahead, Greg.
All right, Greg, you're up.
Got it. All right. Yesterday, Riley Gale, lead singer of Power Trip and all-around brilliant dude, died in his sleep at the age of 34. I became friends with Riley in the most unlikely realm, Twitter. I played 2 of his songs right here on the 5 from his amazing record, Nightmare Logic. If you love metal, you'll dig that, and you should get it and make that album go #1. The band's Twitter reaction after I played their songs ceased to desist. But Riley wanted to talk about it, so I called him up. The phone call lasted 2.5 hours. We laughed at how some people think it's wrong for people who disagree to be friends. From that moment on, that's what we became, friends, good friends. He gave me this damn shirt. We met in Texas at a bar with his great dad, and both came with me to my book signing where Riley actually helped unpack my books and hand them out. It was priceless. It was a blast. During this pandemic, we talked often and a lot about everything under the sun. It was clear this period was hitting him pretty hard, so we helped each other out. I wish I had done more, frankly. I'm going to miss him. Riley Gale, rest and rock in peace. If you want to make a donation in his name, check out Dallas Hope Charities.
Powerful tribute. I'm sorry for your loss. I have a little bit slightly different thing to talk about. It's National Dog Day, so of course, got to talk about the dogs. This is Kayla. She is 2020 Cutest Canine. She is an explosive detection canine, and she just won the Cutest Canine contest that the TSA held. And, dogs are amazing. I feel great about the Vizsla. Jasper, this is what Jasper did today. It didn't work like Kayla did. Jasper was just hanging out. Also, I've got a new podcast, I'll tell you what, on foxnewspodcast.com. Jesse.
Jesse's movie recommendations. Let's see it. Do we have anything? There it is. Look at those 3D glasses. Actually, I own a pair like that. All right. There's a movie out. It's called Guest House. It stars my bud, Pauly Shore. It drops on September 4th. It looks hilarious. Do we have a clip?
I just don't feel comfortable allowing some weirdo to live in our guest house.
Jesus, that's not okay.
I totally forgot to tell you they're bug bombing the house today. It's actually really funny. I laughed out loud when I watched the trailer. It's a Lionsgate release. September 4th, everybody. Don't miss it.
Do not miss it. Looks great. Juan, you got 23 seconds.
All right, well, I just want to say I love rainbows, and I want you guys to look at a picture, because rainbows I know are in the sky, but look at this one. It's a cave. That's the St. Cuthbert's Cave in Britain, and as legends has it, mothers used to bring sick children there in the 1800s. Now it's abandoned, but it's a natural wonder.
All right, that's it for us. We're going to hand it off to Brett Baer for special coverage of the Republican National Convention. Hey, Brett.
Hey, I'm still here.